It was the longest day in modern military history. A day that began in silence, shrouded in fog, with men writing final letters to mothers they would never see again. By nightfall, over 10,000 would fall. And yet, the future of Europe and of freedom itself would begin to shift in those bloody sands. This is the story of D-Day, not just as a military operation, but as a crucible of human courage, sacrifice, and deception, and of how on the shores of Normandy, the tide of tyranny began to recede. Chapter 1. A World on Edge. By early 1944, the world stood at a crossroads. Hitler's war machine controlled vast stretches of Europe, France, Poland, Norway, the Low Countries, all under Nazi boots. The Eastern Front raged with unspeakable brutality, and though Soviet forces pushed westward, the cost in human life was unfathomable. The Allies needed a second front, not a raid, not a feint, but a massive, decisive invasion to break Hitler's grip from the West and crush the Reich in a pincer of iron. The code name was Operation Overlord, but history would know it by another name, D-Day. Chapter 2. Planning the Impossible. The scale was staggering. Over 150,000 troops, more than 5,000 ships, nearly 12,000 aircraft, 5 beachheads, codenamed Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juno, and Sword, spanning 50 miles of heavily fortified French coastline. General Dwight D. Eisenhower, Supreme Commander of the Allied Expeditionary Forces, bore the crushing weight of responsibility. He knew failure wasn't just possible, it was probable. The German defenses, known as the Atlantic Wall, had been fortified for years. Concrete bunkers, anti-tank obstacles, machine gun nests, artillery zeroed in with terrifying precision. Behind every landing craft would be a death sentence waiting. And yet, the landings had to succeed. There was no backup plan, no second chance. Chapter 3. Deception and Disinformation. What the world would later call genius began as deception. Operation Fortitude, a vast misinformation campaign, fooled German high command into believing the real invasion would land at Pas-de-Calais, not Normandy. Fake armies were created, inflatable tanks, wooden aircraft, false radio traffic. General George S. Patton, perhaps the most feared Allied commander, was used as bait, made to appear in the southeast of England, far from the true staging grounds. Even German double agents feeding false intelligence became weapons of psychological warfare. Hitler bought the lie. He held back critical panzer divisions, expecting a second, larger attack at Calais. By the time he realized the truth, it was too late. Chapter 4. Into the Fire. June 6, 1944, 6:30 a.m. The first wave hit the beaches. At Omaha, the cost was horrifying. American forces waded into a nightmare. Their boats opened directly into machine gun fire. Mortar shells tore through the surf. Bodies piled up in the rising tide. Survivors recalled the water turning red. Men drowned under the weight of their gear. Some never even made it off the ramp. And yet, they advanced, inch by inch, yard by yard, climbing cliffs, disarming mines, charging bunkers. At Juno, Canadian forces pushed through harsh resistance. At Sword, British troops surged forward, linking with airborne units. At Utah, mislanded paratroopers adapted in real time, turning confusion into success. Each beach told a different story, but all were written in blood. Chapter 5. The Human Toll. It's easy to recite numbers, but behind every number is a name, a mother, a brother, a life cut short. Private First Class Carl H. Dorr, age 19, killed within minutes of landing at Omaha. His last letter read, "If I don't make it, tell my sister I love her, and tell Mom not to cry too hard." These were not warriors by birth. They were farmers, students, clerks, called to something greater than themselves, and when the moment came, they did not run. Chapter 6. Breaking the Wall. By midday, the Allies had secured their foothold. It wasn't total victory, not yet. But it was the beginning of the end. German command, paralyzed by uncertainty and Hitler's refusal to release reinforcements, failed to respond in time. In the weeks that followed, over 2 million Allied troops would pour into France. Town after town would fall. Resistance fighters rose up. Civilians wept in the streets. Paris would be liberated within 80 days. And the road to Berlin, though still long and hard, had opened. Chapter 7. Why Normandy mattered. Normandy wasn't just a military victory, it was a moral turning point. It proved that evil, no matter how entrenched, could be resisted and undone. That when free people unite under a just cause, even the most fortified walls can crumble. It wasn't perfect. Mistakes were made. Lives were lost. But the courage displayed on those beaches changed history. It gave the world something it had almost lost: hope. Chapter 8. Legacy of D-Day. Today, the beaches of Normandy are peaceful. The sea washes gently over the sands where so many once fell. White crosses stretch in silent rows across green fields. The wind carries no screams now, only memory. But history does not forget. D-Day remains a symbol, not just of war, but of resolve, of ordinary men performing extraordinary deeds, of a generation that looked fear in the face and stepped forward anyway. Closing statement. There are few moments in history when the world truly turns. June 6, 1944, was one of them. Because of what happened that day, because of the bravery, sacrifice, and resolve, millions would live in freedom who otherwise would have perished in darkness. This was D-Day, not just a battle, a reckoning, a promise, a beginning of the end. And for those who gave their lives, a final act of defiance against tyranny. We remember. We will always remember.